So, welcome to the Authority Advantage Live, where we explore how senior leaders become seen, trusted, and chosen. I'm Carol Kaemmerer. I'm pleased to welcome you here today. One of the things that I write about and speak about in my work is that people make first impressions of us in a matter of minutes with very little information before we even have a chance to explain ourselves. In my work, I see that senior leaders expect that by doing good work, they'll naturally be recognized. What they don't realize is that the impressions that they make are far more than just their performance. And that's why I'm so excited to welcome my friend and guest, Sheila Anderson. Sheila and I enter the story of helping senior leaders be seen, found, and chosen from different vantage points. I enter from your LinkedIn presence, from how you communicate online. Of course, there's more, but Sheila also enters first from image and executive presence. Both of us, though, come to the same conclusion, and that is that we're sending signals all the time, and that those signals don't necessarily advantage us. And so let's get into the conversation, Sheila. I want to know when you first encounter an executive, what are some of the signals that you make your first impression from, and why does that matter?
Yeah, that's a great question. And most people would probably think I'm noticing somebody's clothing. But honestly, the first thing I'm looking at, and I've done some research in psychology and neuroscience, is we notice people's energy. So we notice how maybe they're walking into the room, how they're showing up on Zoom. And so that's the first thing that people notice about somebody else is their energy, their posture. Are they making eye contact? And then after we look at that, then that's where we kind of move to their appearance. And often, and then it's not clothing yet, it's then we're looking at their facial expressions and we're looking at their smile and, again, their eyes. Then we get to the clothing, and it's not actually what you're wearing, it's the color you're wearing. So in order, it's like looking at that energy when somebody walks in the room, their posture, how they're interacting with people, and then we move to the different characteristics or traits on your face, your eyes, again, your smile, that type of thing, and then we look at the color of clothing. So those are the three levels that when people look at you or meet you, that's what they're sizing up, and they want to know, right? This is instinct. Do I trust you, or are you a threat? And that's what they're trying to gather when they're meeting you.
Interesting. So when I first look at a LinkedIn profile, here are some of the things that I see. I see whether they've bothered to change the banner. Are they a player or are they not? I look at their picture. What is their posture in the picture? So I do pick up those visual cues as well in terms of how do they express themselves in just a headshot. The next thing I look at is the headline. And of course, I want to delve quickly into the about section. So a lot of these actually have ties to each other. The way that we feel about ourselves is expressed in different ways. It's expressed on our digital profile and also as we show up in the room. So I tell executives that they're making first impressions while they're asleep through their LinkedIn profile. And of course, you point out quite appropriately that people also are making first impressions when they walk in the room. So, how do these things go together?
I love this because, and I love the work that you do with that. We Google people before we meet them. And what comes up most often is our LinkedIn profile. And what are we looking at? We're curious on what somebody looks like. So we want to see what their picture is. And then we go into the headline. So I love that. Your LinkedIn profile is always on. So around the world, because it's a different time everywhere. And so people are Googling you at all times of the day. They're looking at your LinkedIn profile while you're sleeping. So I always say that your brand never sleeps. It's on 24/7.
Absolutely.
You have to be aware of that. So LinkedIn does create that first impression often online, but your executive presence then needs to fulfill that promise that you have on LinkedIn. And so when I meet you in person, or if I, visiting with you on Zoom or online, it should be that you are exactly what I expected you to be from your LinkedIn profile. So if there's a disconnect there, if your LinkedIn profile isn't highlighting things that, what's your thought leadership, what are your skills, again, your profile picture, all those things, then your trust will take a hit because there's not congruence, and we always are looking for consistency. The brain is always scanning things to look for consistency.
Well, that brings me to a client story. So I worked with a client who had been chief operating officer for many years, and he had been with his same company for maybe 20. He had deep experience in his work, and so I had no trouble at all making him shine on LinkedIn. He had all the credentials. He had wonderful stories to tell, great performance, great accomplishments. And so his profile looked great. But the reason that I was working with him was that he had to move out of state because his wife had taken a job elsewhere. And so he was going to enter the job search market for the first time in 20 years. And I looked at his picture, and there wasn't anything I could do about it other than say, hey, we need a new picture here. And we talked about what he would wear. Well, he didn't have any of those clothes. That wasn't the way they dressed at his work. And I said, well, you are going in a different place, and you are going to be competing with people who know how to dress. And so before I released him to go on his search, I introduced him to an image consultant and picked out his photographer. And of course, when all those signals were aligned, both his LinkedIn profile and his personal appearance opportunities came his way. So, it works both ways. We both see the advantage of beginning just seeing the ways that people communicate.
Yeah, I love that. And that's, I applaud you for the work that you did for him, because it is creating that whole picture, creating that consistency. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want. We want it to all be cohesive. It all points back to the same picture. And I often tell people, I think you are leaving money on the table with how you're showing up. And that hits them because they think about, and it's not just showing up maybe in your clothing, again, it's your presence, it's what are you writing online, your thought leadership, all of that, again, paints that big picture of your executive presence and who you are. And so people make snap judgments quickly. And I've talked to HR professionals where they'll say they can tell when somebody walks in to an interview or shows up on a Zoom interview within seconds if they're going to really listen to that person or if they've already dismissed them. And it's based on the presence they show up with, and it's based on what they're wearing, again, their facial features, if they're smiling, their eye contact, all of that. It's instantaneous and it all matters. And if one thing, like you said, if one of those things is out of alignment, then your trust takes a hit.
It does. It does. Absolutely. So I wanted to invite our attendees to ask any questions in the chat. You are not able to communicate with us either any way other than chat, but if you would do that, that would be awesome. And Sheila, as you look to the present and the future, how do you think presence has changed over, say, 5-10 years before? The importance of presence.
Yeah, I think it matters more today because we're dealing with AI and we're all using it when we're all trying to figure it out. But one of the things that I believe AI has really brought to the forefront is authenticity. We talk about that all the time. Sometimes it's a buzzword. Sometimes people just get tired about hearing it. But AI really has brought that authenticity to the forefront because AI can't replace your emotional intelligence. It can't replace how you make people feel and your presence. So I think it matters a lot more today than it has in the past. And when we're creating that, I call it that experience that people have with you, what is that experience that you want people to have with you? And if you think about that, it's something that we do in corporate branding. I have over 30 years of corporate branding experience as well. And it's the same in personal branding and corporate branding. How is it that you want people to experience you? And what are those brand attributes, corporate side or the personal side? What are those brand attributes that help make up that story, that help tell that story? So if you want to come across as maybe really detailed, then everything about you has to say detailed. Your how you're showing up, your communications, how you're speaking, your email, your clothing, all of that has to look detailed because again, if it's not consistent,
right,
then that sends a message to the brain going,
yeah.
And we want, and again, the going back to the authenticity part, it's hard if you're not authentic. It can be draining. So I think in the world of AI, it's really we're so connected that we're starving for connection, that personal connection, that interaction, being in somebody's presence, and that experience that you're creating when somebody is in your presence. That really is where your personal brand lies.
Okay, let's see. We have a comment here. Let's see. Deep fake rich world. Okay, yes, indeed.
Oh, hi, Nav.
Yes, that's great. And Mike Sherman says, as an icebreaker, are there any epic fail, lack of presence examples you can share? Can authenticity be perceived as overconfidence or even arrogance?
Yeah, I think if you're trying too hard, if you're coming across more bold than who you are internally, that people can notice that, they can tell that. And are there any epic fail, lack of presence examples? Let me think through that.
Swearing at the board. be an epic fail, to try to be the buttoned up corporate person that you were hired to be, and slip and use inappropriate words anytime.
Yeah.
So
examples.
Yeah. Well, where I did most of my work, there was a leader who had the title that gave him authority, but he used it to belittle people and yell in the office and be inappropriate. And he did that in front of a client who reported him. He dressed down an employee in front of the client, and he used inappropriate language. And the client got satisfaction. He lost his job within the hour. So, just interesting.
It's a great example.
Yeah.
And it's important how we treat people, again, how people are experiencing us throughout the day, whether it's on, at your job, or if you're, at a networking event, all those types of things. That showing up consistently and in alignment to who you are, because people know if you're not in alignment, if you're not being true to yourself, if you're not somebody that how they treat people. That's a big deal. And your example was very, very good, because we see that often where titles can overpower and become an ego trip for a lot of people. So that's something that needs to be, thought through, and it's okay for you to get feedback on that, right? To have a candid conversation with somebody to say, hey, this is how you're coming across, because how we feel like we're coming across may not really be how we're perceived from others. So getting that feedback from others is really, really important. And having enough courage to approach somebody and say, I'd like to offer you some feedback. And I think we all grow from that. And that just helps us how we're showing up and being authentic. And I think it's really, really important. And sometimes that can bite a little bit, but that's when maybe we need it the most. Because we think we're coming across in a certain way. And if you ask other people how you're coming across, that's a really good exercise. Ask some of your friends, ask some of your people that you really look up to, how am I coming across? What are those words that you would use to describe my interactions with you? And gather that information and look and see is there consistency in how people are describing you, how they're describing how you're showing up, those types of things. And if they're not consistent, then obviously there's some disconnect in how you were presenting yourself.
We have a question from Sayre. She says, what should you pay attention to when you walk into a company to immediately adjust your presence to their culture or the purpose of the meeting? I think we do it unconsciously more than realize what we should look for.
Yeah, wow, that's good.
Yeah, one of the things that I notice is what do people who are not attending the meeting wear? Because one of the things is that when someone had a meeting at the company that I was associated with, they would dress all up and everybody else is wearing blue jeans, and so there's a dichotomy there. So I think that looking also at what the people in the room are wearing will help you stand a little straighter, perhaps.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is I'm going to Google that company before I have that meeting and see what I can, if there's pictures of, maybe they have pictures on their LinkedIn or their websites or any other social media of that, I can get a sense of what people are wearing, what their office looks like, a little bit about their culture. I'm reading maybe what their core values are, those types of things. So I do my research before I go into a corporation or those meetings to try and get a sense of what's that overall flavor of that organization. And similar, I do it with people again, right? We're going to look you up on LinkedIn. I'm going to get a sense of who they are before I meet with them. I think that's helpful, though. That's a great question, because if you walk into a very business casual environment and you are in a suit and tie and everything, it can be a little little maybe not in alignment with what they are, but it's okay because you're probably coming in as the expert, and you can always take that that tie off or that jacket off. So it's easier to be dressed up than dressed down, and you always want to look like one level above with where you're going into. So
I think that the reception area tells a lot about the company.
It does.
How they've kept it, how they have clothed the reception area, what fabrics have they used, what color schemes have they used, and is it rumpled looking or buttoned up? As another thing that is a clue, because we all have been in that holding space. We might as well take a look and see what we can gain from that examination.
Yeah.
So let's see. I saw Margaret had it. There you go. Can you ever suggest, this is from Margaret Ritchie, can you ever suggest to a new connection that they should change their profile picture? A new connection has a picture that seems very tough looking, but his communication with me has been very genuine and friendly. What do you do? Well, from my experience of being the right person, I often made comments like that kind of in a first meeting, and that was not the right time. Or I can show you how to get your picture to show up, because a lot of times people didn't have a picture on their profile and it was a settings error. Some people just didn't want to know. And so I had misread the signals and jumped in with my great advice. But Margaret, you are such a gentle and kind person. I know that you would not jump ahead before you had a relationship with him. Obviously, you have enough experience with this person now that you have a sense of how he treats people. And you could let him know that his picture is not consistent with how you experience him. Consistency, as Sheila's already pointed out, is so huge in branding. And I know that you can find a gentler way than I used in my early days.
Yeah, I think that is a good question, and it's a hard thing to approach. And there's a couple of questions that I'll ask somebody, like, when was the last time you updated your profile picture? How current is this photo? Are there, do you want some feedback on your LinkedIn profile to make it stronger, represent you more? And if their picture is not in really alignment with who they are, just say, this is probably what I would do, is that, again, when did you update this photo? And these are some of the words that come to mind when I interact with you, when I think about you. And this picture is not saying those words is not,
Yeah.
it could be, right, you're so much more genuine, or you're so much more, whatever, warm in person. And so let's just make sure that people recognize that online. So, I mean, that's a gentle conversation, and it's a hard one, but if they're
Yes.
coming to you for your expertise, then, you know,
That's
they
it.
hired
Yeah.
you to give them feedback. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, what is one thing that you hope leaders will do differently tomorrow as a result of this conversation today?
I hope they'll become more intentional with just how they're showing up overall, and to ask themselves every day this one question: how do I want people to experience me? If you think about your day, if you think about what meetings you're going to, what Zoom calls you have, um, anything right in your business world, how is it that you want people to experience you? And then how do you align that with your presence for that day, with your color psychology? You can do a whole thing on that. Your clothing choices, and the words that you're going to speak or say to those people. Just think about owning that experience that others have with you, and to be really intentional about it, to think about it. When you get up in the morning, how is it that I want people to experience me? And to be really intentional and to be consistent.
I love that. So for me, I would want senior leaders to look at their profile with new eyes and ask themselves the question, if this was the only piece of information that people had about me, would they come to the conclusion that I would wish they would come to? And if not, that's the next leadership opportunity.
Excellent.
So we've come to the end of our time, and I'm so excited for our conversation, Sheila. I'm so pleased with how we worked together to communicate a message that is important for everyone to hear. That there are many signals that we send, that all of those signals matter, that consistency is so important. So thank you all for joining us, spending a portion of your morning with us today, and we wish you a great day of intentionality. Thanks so much.
Thank you.